So guys, what's next down your way? And we haven't even touched on Sigma yet. We could probably do a whole half hour on
Yeah.
Sigma. And you mentioned that you got your phones are ringing, as are ours. I think I said to you earlier, Nicole, that we've started the enrollment process for 7 Sigma properties this week. And it only becomes unenrolled today. It's so scary for people. So what's next for you guys?
Yeah, I think for us, we really, when we first started Empowered Livability, we actually really wanted to focus on people to build their own homes. So not
Yeah.
using investors, actually helping people be able to, get their own loans to build their own property that's purpose built for them. Unfortunately, back, 9, 10 years ago, the banks were not really on board with that.
Mhm.
So I think, for us, we've had our kind of Empowered Housing brand that we launched probably about 18 months ago, and we've done a couple of builds for people through that pipeline. Because again,
Sorry,
and
Justin's calling me right now. I'll have to call him back. Justin, yeah.
He must have.
I reckon his ears were pricked up a little bit. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. So we really want to be focusing on that. We want to help people own their own homes, however we can make that happen. I know Goro's been really working from a finance perspective, with that mortgage broking background, to look at other stuff. So Goro, I don't know if you want to speak about that around how we're sort of making it happen for people.
So a lot of people aren't aware that if you or someone, for these are for people listening to the podcast right now. So if you or someone you live with has a disability, the SDA does provide a potential pathway to home ownership, and there's a few people doing that out there. Just information for people. The SDA with some lenders, there's literally 2 lenders out there right now that allow this. We're currently lobbying for more that allow the SDA income to actually be counted as serviceability. What that means, though, is that if you're the only person, let's say you have the disability and there's no one else in the house with an earning income, it may not be feasible for you. However, if there's someone else in the household earning some sort of income, all of a sudden it looks like, hey, just like, the average person, they typically need a couple's wage these days to own a house. Same situation. And if there's access to a deposit, great. That's how we can get started. And also, for example, if there's parents who want to build something for their children, we're also getting them through where they're able to, build a house for their children using the deposit equity in their house effectively as a deposit along with the serviceability. So,
and this is something that you're helping people with now, Goro, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Well, what's that business called? Just plug it so people can find you and understand how to get to that.
Over to you, Nicole. You're the marketing expert behind that one.
Yes, that's not
I'm the grunt.
Yeah. So we've got Empowered Housing, which is just that second arm, which is around that owner builder. And Goro's company, Ethical Investments, is able to help out from a mortgage perspective as well. And I know, Goro, you've got some special, projects on the go at the moment where we're trying to help owners who are, in financial distress, wanting to sell their SDA asset and trying to find participants who potentially want to buy that asset for them to own and live in themselves. And I think, Appendix
with
H
no money down, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're working on a no money down strategy as well. So we're working with the owners to do a vendor finance transaction where the 20% deposit effectively is carried by the first owner of the property, and it gets paid down over a period of time. So there's some really innovative stuff we're able to do around this space. And look, I know the oversupply is not a great thing, but also gives people an opportunity if they want to own their own home. Yes, I know it's further out, but the way I look at it, when someone's buying their first home, yes, they do tend to go further out.
Correct.
That's where an exception to the rule.
Vendor finance is good. People sometimes have this connotation about vendor finance. It's a dirty word. I've used it very effectively in commercial deals over the years. And it's a great lever for people to get into property if it's done correctly and smartly, right? So it sounds like you guys are doing this in a way that really empowers people's future, which is important, and with an owner who's willing to work with them, because they got into this space normally in the first place for the right reasons, but they've learned some hard lessons along the way. So it's another opportunity for them to keep doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And a lot of those owners want that. They are generally hearts-based people who have gone into this to try and help people. It hasn't worked out for them, but I think a lot of them are still committed to actually wanting to help people. And if they have to sell their property, and in some cases it is at lower than what they've unfortunately had to spend, they would rather do that to somebody who will live in that property for a long period of time because it's purpose-built for them, rather than to another investor who's gonna sit there probably empty for another 12 months again, trying to do the exact same thing.
So
At
great.
least
So
yeah,
empowered livability and empowered, what's this?
housing, empowered
Empowered
housing.
housing
Yeah.
and ethical investments, Goro, that you lead up as well,
Mm.
sort of
Yeah.
ties it all
Ethical
together.
property investments, just wanted to
Yeah,
clear
ethical
that up.
property, and I know that
Yeah.
you do webinars and
Yes.
education pieces around that. So,
Oh,
is that
we
so?
actually just launched something that I'm not sure if the market's aware of, but talking about market stewardship, we decided
Yeah,
as ethical property investments where that's an investor facing company. We've drawn a line in the sand saying because we were one of the first few to work with the, I guess, retail investors. Our new rule is that unless it's a knockdown rebuild or a brownfield location, and unless the investor's a sophisticated investor, we're not letting them through the door. Those are our
now
new
just
rules.
define because there's
Yep.
a specific definition of sophisticated
Yes.
investor. Do you want to define that?
Yes. So the legal definition, and I like the legal definition, whether someone gets the accountant certificate for this, I don't really care about, but as long as they fit the rule of having 2 years of at least $250,000 income, or I believe about $2.5 million worth of assets, that qualifies as a sophisticated investor in the current terminology.
Great. That's important to know. And so if you are looking at SDA investment and you're going to put your last $20 into your last payment, please don't. Please. Please don't. You're gonna make life very hard for yourself. So we have to talk about it. I think I'm going to say the word Sigma. That now today's the day that the agency is deregistering Sigma. I'm not across all of the exact reasons and rationale. I can only assume that it's happened so few times in the past where the agency's deregistered an SDA provider, they've got their reasons.
Mm.
And the impact, however, is quite broad. I know that you guys are taking phone calls from people. It seems to be predominantly Queensland based at the moment, these
Yeah.
properties. We're certainly taking phone calls. I don't know. What's your take on it? How do you feel about all of this and from whatever angle we sort of look at?
Was
I
Yeah,
have I've seen some screenshots this week that actually show previous name being the previous provider that was also deregistered. I think again it puts all of us on notice to make sure
yeah,
that we're all actually doing the right thing, that we're audit ready all of the time,
yeah.
that we're supporting each other as well. Because again, I don't know how many properties they ended up, and as we know, potentially didn't even enroll them anyway, but how many they actually took on. But I
I,
think for
I
one
think around
provider,
100, around 170, 175 is the number I've heard.
yeah, and I think even 2 or 3 providers taking on those houses is going to potentially cause a huge big bottleneck again. And I think the focus needs to be on the people who are actually living in the properties, obviously giving owners choice and control over, which providers they go
Yep.
with. But I think we all need to stick together and say we can only take on this many properties. Here's 3 other providers that we suggest are great workers, great providers in the space. Because I think if all, if 10 of us took on 10 properties, it's not a huge bulk, but it's not going to then, basically have us crumble because we've tried to
Yep.
take all of them on. We wouldn't probably even take on, I mean, especially in Queensland, we probably would look at handing, or suggesting, the great providers that are up there, like yourselves, like, Just STA, like Apollo, like there's great providers up there that I think would do a better job on the ground. And we would hope then on the flip side that there'd be providers who are potentially getting, opportunities in Victoria that might say, well, Empowered or, there's plenty of other providers down here in place, or whoever in HAB, there's lots of other providers that could take on 5 or 10 houses each rather than trying to take on a huge bulk, because I
Yeah,
think
I agree. It is a bit of work. Like again, we
yeah,
were sort of talking before we started that it's really hard for the lay person to appreciate how much work goes into putting a single participant in a single home. Like
exactly.
the layers of work and the stakeholders. Some of our participants can have up to 12 stakeholders for one person, and
Yeah,
all of these people have a role to play. All of them have a voice that needs to be heard, that's supporting the participant. They all have a different perspective and a set of requirements they're trying to meet to take care of that person. So it's not an ad on realestate.com with 50 people turn up to a flat over a shop. It's layers and layers of compliance. It's layers and layers of communication. And when now you've got properties that have been through NDISP and that deregistration, you've got Sigma, and most of those were transitioned to Sigma. Then you got Sigma's deregistration. For the participant, they're getting shuffled, and there's different people on the phone and showing up to the door, and we're this now, and stakeholders are who are you, and they're changing, and SILs are upset, and like it's really discombobulating. So
yeah,
I said at the start, they actually really needs to let owners know their choices, so they don't get sort of
yeah,
shoehorned
yeah.
into someone that don't really understand what's going on.
Exactly. And I think we need to safeguard the sustainability of those properties, because odds are that some of those owners are at such financial distress
Yeah,
that they might just have to sell those properties.
yeah.
We want to make sure that that means that the transition is still like that those properties are potentially sold with leases in place, so that people can stay in those properties, and then the new owner hopefully isn't in financial distress and has another couple of months to wait for a lot of this stuff to get sorted, because again, the agency is going to get 120 new house enrolments straight away from 10 different providers.
Yep.
It could still take time, and then it means that our other properties that we're all trying to enroll with new people moving in are then going to have more of a backlog as well. So I think we need to really safeguard the participants in this case to make sure it's sustainable, and to ensure that those owners who have generally gone into this space with good intentions, aren't losing their principal place of residency either from going under, or
Which we
um,
do see, and that's part of the tragedy of the.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we see it, and look, like you, no doubt, because you're in our team meetings, you know how we work. Like you, no doubt, you've had owners crying down the phone who are losing their house, and you've seen marriages fall apart because someone said this is a good idea and now it's not worked, and that the stress has broken up families. It's really it's a bit heavy, honestly,
it is.
but also avoidable. So look, yeah. So the Sigma thing's interesting. I think you're right that I know that Justin at Just SDA has been pretty proactive out there, saying to people, you've got choices. You can move across to us or another provider. I've seen that.
Yeah,
I know Apollo would be working in this space. I know Everhome would be working in this space. I know that
exactly.
we are. I know that you are. And again, all of the guys I just mentioned, they're fairly Queensland based.
Yeah.
Adapt probably in this space. David Watlow's in this space. We're all trying to just do what we can to pick up and provide a bit more certainty for people.
Yeah, and I think maybe, and I'm sure Justin's probably already onto it, but almost a group webinar for those owners, just to market it for, a week, and say, jump on this webinar. You're going to get access to 10 different providers who can, will pretty much give you a baseline education crash course in SDA and how it should have worked for you. And then you can, decide maybe, have breakout rooms or something for investors to jump in and speak to each, individual provider to see what works for them, because I think it's going to have to be swift. And we're probably going to have, and I don't know how Sigma and NDSP worked, but I know for us, we provide those white goods and furnishings and stuff in that property. If they're going under, they're going to exactly what happened with Cocoon. They turned up with a truck on a Friday arvo and took all of their furniture and white goods out. Um,
That's disgusting.
that
Really, that happened?
100% happened, yeah. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to these
How do you,
the
even
people
on the
living
way,
in properties.
even on the way out the door, how do you say you've been looking after the best interests of a participant for all these years when you strip out all of their white goods on the last day of work? That's a bit
Exactly,
rough. That's a
exactly.
bit rough.
Yeah,
There's another one
super
up
rough.
in. Have you heard of Centre Care? I think it's an Anglican church supports
Yes.
provider,
Yeah.
and they've heralded that they're going to close the doors in November, December.
Yeah.
And again, so it's another example of a fairly large provider. It's church-based, that they just can't financially make a go, but they're losing money week after week after week. There's
Yeah.
700 participants they take care of across a different range of not just housing, but different range of supports.
Yeah.
And I think over 800 staff in that organisation.
Yeah.
So they're now also looking to collaborate with people to transition. At least it's a bit more controlled this time. It's
Yeah.
I guess it's an example of a way that you can do it with a bit more stewardship. That word, Goro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just sort of be deregistered as of day X with a week's notice is a bit tricky to get your head around.
Yeah. And I think, we've seen similar in Victoria with Anecdo, same sort of situation. And I think it was Melba that took on majority of their properties. And I believe in South Australia, I think it's Bradford Group, who is having a similar situation. I think they've been bailed out by the government, but whether that's
Oh,
sustainable or not, remains to be seen. So I think we're seeing it, we're hearing stories from large not-for-profits especially, that have had, several years of millions of dollars losses, that are really, I guess, really struggling. Like,
of
we've heard
course.
today, we've heard today of
You,
several redundancies at a large provider that, kind of affects
you
the worker.
can't, not for profit or not, you've got to find the money somewhere. People's wages need to get paid. Super's got to get paid. Rent's got to get paid. Mortgages got to get paid.
Exactly.
I think people hear the word not for profit and think, oh, you don't need to make money. There's no such thing as a not for profit, right? It's just where the profit goes once it's made is they put it back into charitable purposes, but they still must make money. And if they're not, and I think, being around the disability space for a few years now, I think there is in some corners, no one wants to say the word money. It's like a dirty word sometimes, which I can respect that and I get it. But you've got to be two-headed. You've got to have that heart-led piece, and you've got to have that business head where you got it. If you're not making money, you can't be heart-led because there's nothing to lead because it's collapsed, right?
Exactly, and none of us can pay the bills with, love hearts. The bank's not gonna take that,
Yeah.
IOU kind of situation, and I think, if the not-for-profits who are getting the tax breaks are not making it work, then that is a huge red flag for the rest of us. And I think we need to especially with, rising costs of work cover, super, and everyone wants to be able to pay staff what they're worth and what they deserve. Like, there's absolutely been so much work over, the last 20 years to make sure that support workers are paid fair and equitable wages. But when not-for-profits who are getting those tax breaks aren't making it work, then I think
Do you
that's
feel like those businesses are run well, Nicole? Like I've chatted to a few senior people at not-for-profits lately. We've been recruiting for a CEO, which we've just accepted. Offer's been accepted this week, so we've got a new CEO start on the 22nd. And I won't jump the gun and to it is. We've let the team know, but for now we'll keep it to ourselves. But suffice to say that she starts on the 22nd of September. But during that process, speaking to a lot of these not-for-profits and executives that have come from that world, I heard a few times that, they've come into these organizations and they're just bloated, they're inefficient, they're slow, they're not lean, they're not mean. Like, what's your observation about not-for-profits looking into them?
I think, from what I've seen, and again, this is from 25 years right across, right across the sector, there's not a lot of space for innovation in a lot of those organizations. I know for us, when we started Empowered, we absolutely bootstrapped this business with nothing. We didn't take a wage for 3 years. No one's working in
100%.
an organization,
Yeah.
no one's working in
Yeah.
an organization for
Yeah.
free several years before,
Only owners do that.
Hey,
Only
hey,
owners.
Nick, you forget to mention we still barely take anything
Oh,
for a
Exactly.
comparison point of view, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
And this is why people are like, oh, you guys are making so much profit as an SDA product. I'm like, yeah, okay, wrong
You got
business.
you got
yeah,
no idea what it costs to run an SDA because it's so
yeah,
people heavy.
Actually,
yeah,
can we have a chat about that, because I think this is important for investors listening to it. There's a lot of misnomers. Hey, why are your fees whatever they are? And I know, there might be different percentages around the room. Like the amount of staff it takes to run an SDA provision, I've done the calculations. according to me, it takes 10x the amount of staff to run an SDA organization compared to a regular property manager. Would you agree with that, Dave?
I think at least, we've been doing this work as well. So today, with technology and VAs and all the clever CRMs and computer and processes, I'm hearing feedback from the market, and we're working with property management businesses to try and solve this riddle. A property manager in Australia managing an Australian portfolio would be expected to have in their personal portfolio anywhere between 250 to 300 properties, and then they're backed up with some VAs and AI, right? Now, there's zero chance you can have an SDA provider manage with a single property manager 250 properties or tenancies. No chance.
Yeah, no.
So if a regular property manager charges 6%, we should be charging 60%, right? Technically. So effectively, how I see it, whatever we charge is actually quite heavily discounted for the amount of work that goes in. Not just to secure,
because it has to fund the rest of because there's compliance, there's the constant, there's all the accounting, that's all the extra layers of accounting. There's the tenancy procurement process, right? Whether you charge an engagement fee or not, there's staff that need to sit there and do that and go and travel and get in the car and meet people. There's so much more that goes into it than property management.
And even just then, once people have actually physically moved in, it's that work and keeping those relationships so that people stay in those houses. And if you've got, for us, I think our relationship managers have about 30 to 40 houses each in their region. If they've already got that and they've got, 2 to 3 people in each of those houses, that continuity of support is a full-time job. You then keep adding more and more houses to that person. They're not able to then keep focusing on those people that are already living in the properties that need,
and like
that
we said, some individuals can have up to 12 stakeholders, right? So you've got 30, 40 houses, a couple of people, maybe your property manager has 60 to 80 tenancies, right? And those 60 to 80 tenancies could easily account for 300 relationships there are to maintain, easily.
Easily. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's funny. I was running a webinar Tuesday. Someone's like, "Oh, being an SEO provider sounds easy. I should be one." I'm like, "Yeah, go for it. Let me know how you go in a few years."
You should absolutely go and do that. And I hear this as well. But the barrier to entry to become an SDA provider right now is so high. I don't know how people can get into the business. Honestly, it's so difficult to even just maintain it, let alone learn it and start one. It would be mind bending. Yeah.
Yeah. We were really lucky, 10 years ago when we kind of got together, we kind of had, and the 3 points of our triangle is basically the disability side, the actual kind of finance around investment side, and then the ongoing maintenance and build project management side. We were lucky to have those 3 heads together that could get this off the ground. A lot of people that I've seen kind of from that point who have come from a purely real estate or development point of view into disability, I think I can't even imagine how hard it would be for them to get their head around compliance. And I think they're probably the ones that have bought off the shelf policies and procedures. They don't know how, their SOPs don't match those policies and procedures, and they're likely the ones that aren't able to make it, past the first couple of years, and potentially will be ones we see moving forward get deregistered because they just don't understand the amount of work from a disability lens that actually needs to go into
they get to their first audit and their heart falls out and they go, I can't do this. They got to, because they're not audit ready, and to get audit ready, it's wild. Exactly. I mean, I'm not sure about you guys, we've got a full-time compliance officer. And her job is just to make sure we're always compliant, always audit ready, always refining the CRM and make sure it's fit for purpose. And that's a full-time job. And that doesn't generate revenue, that job. That's a non-revenue generating role that needs to be funded by the rest of the business, right? And there's a few of those.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
guys, I think we need to stop talking. We're violently agreeing all afternoon. We need to wrap this. I'm going to chop this up. But it is 3 o'clock on a Friday. We all got things we want to do. Guys, this has been just a whole lot of fun. I'd love to do it again when Lauren's back from her trip away. We'll see what happens in the next month or two with the fallout, but I don't know, maybe a Christmas episode we can do together.
Yes.
And
true.
We'll wear our Santa hats or our Christmas elf hats.
Yeah. Guys, anything you want to say before we sign off?
I could probably say a million things, but to me, talking about that sustainability, just work together. We're not all competitors. As much as, from a market perspective, yes, we have to compete. But I think the fairer those competitions are and the more that we're supporting each other, the better outcomes we're going to get for people, because the NDIS is never going to regulate us to the nth degree that I think SDA probably needs some of. We have to regulate ourselves. And we have to make sure that we're doing the best possible things that we can for the people that we work with.
Well said.
Yes.
And Goro?
I've said this before. I'll say it again, and I'll say it for a long time. It's all about humans in homes, not bodies in houses.
Yeah, beautiful. Guys, it's been a real treat. Thank you for saying yes, and thank you for the very long extended chat. And I do look forward to do it again. I'll let you know when it hits, and share the links with you and stuff like that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.